Heave away my darling, heave away, heave away. Heave away my darling, boy, we're bound for Australia. Heave away my jolly, jolly boy, heave away, heave away. Heave away my jolly, jolly boy, we're bound for Australia. Oh, welcome, welcome, welcome to the Boston Tavern. Yes, sir, this is the Boston Tavern, and I am Absalom Boston. And the little shop in the alley, that's mine too. Although you don't have to find me there. The missus takes care of the store. The tavern is where I'm at. Bought them both when I retired. What did I retire from? Well, we'll get to that, but first we have some other things to settle and make it easier for you to understand who we were. You know, until I owned a tavern, I was never aware of all the knowledge one can acquire in such a place. Of course, when you take into consideration who frequented the tavern, it was understandable. We had all gone to sea when we were nothing more than boys. Don't ask me why. Surrounded by the ocean on Nantucket, it was the only choice. Plus, that's where the money was, and the excitement, and just discovering the world. It was great. Well, getting back to the Boston Tavern, you see, my customers at the Boston had all traveled the world, seen it all, as they say, and we did it. We did it way before the aeroplane came into being. What? There was a time that if you wanted to see the world, you either hoofed it or you sailed. And if you were from Nantucket, like we were, there was no other choice except sailing. Yes, those were fine days, the best. But getting back again to the Boston Tavern, my customers had all seen the world, seen things others had no idea of. Oh, we had some wonderful discussions about our different opinions of things that we had all seen, no two sets of eyes having witnessed them alike. And that was why when Nathaniel, this large black man who ended up in Europe and Africa, made a statement, took us all back a little. We began to think that maybe he was a teller of tall tales. But after checking with the local folks and the library, we found that Nathaniel was correct. Now, you might be asking, why did we doubt Nathaniel? Well, listen and I'll tell you how it all came about. Now, it was back in 47 or 48, between gulps of his rum, Nathaniel said, "Bet most of you never knew there was a black pope." Well, he was correct with that statement. Now, we were waiting for what we thought was a joke line coming here, but after a few more sips of his rum, he said, "Yes, sir, his name was Gelasius I. That's Gelasius I. Was pope for 4 years, 8 months, and 18 days. Later, we were thankful that Nathaniel hadn't seen fit to fill us in with the hour and the minutes of Gelasius' papacy. We had no doubt that they were in his possession. But what we did doubt was the authenticity of there ever being a black pope. Now that night there was 12 of us at the Boston, 4 white men, 8 of us blacks, well actually 7 if you don't count Nathaniel, the teller. Well, to cut a story short that went on for the better part of a month to a few minutes, here's how it went. With the help of the local scholar and the library folks and a few others whose opinions we respected, we found that Nathaniel was correct. Yes, sir. This Gelasius, that's Gelasius, was quite a man. He wrote so many things about the times he lived in, we figured, you'd have to take a year or two off just to read his stuff. He was the most prolific writer of all the pontiffs for the first 5 centuries. And made us blacks all proud of him, even though none of us knew of him a month previous. My white customers were taken aback by Gelasius too. Yes. Well, we had it just about settled back down to normal. That is what we consider normal for the Boston Tavern. See, I don't know if you understand what it is I'm getting at here. You see, white or black didn't matter. See, we were all Nantucketers. You get 10 to 20 Nantucketers together, and they'd all had a taste or two, and I guarantee there would be some lively conversation and a bit of controversy, and that's a fact. Like I was saying, we're just about settled back down to normal after a month or so debate about Gelasius, the Black Pope, when Nathaniel popped up with another. Out of nowhere, he asked, "Do any of you gentlemen recall hearing about Septimus Severus?" Well, the answer was a unanimous no. In fact, we told Nathaniel, not only had we not heard about him, we had no idea who he was. Well, Nathaniel, after a few more drinks of his rum, went on to tell us about Septimus Severus. He was a Roman emperor from 193 AD to 211 AD. Then he just stopped, seemed to be studying his rum. We all just looked at him. And then into the silence spoke Thomas Gear, our old white whaling captain, just retired. "Well, that's all well and good," he said, "but unless he is buying us all another drink, I don't see what good his being a Roman emperor is doing us." We all laughed at that. Even Nathaniel did. Well, after he settled down, Nathaniel continued. He said, yes, he went over and ruled England too, fought the Brits, kicked their behinds at Hadrian's Wall, had 1,000 or more black Moroccans with him. All Romans, of course. And then he stopped for another drink of his rum. Now, we all just looked. And now, I don't want to talk for everybody present that night, but we all felt that old Nathaniel was up to something. And if you were there and you felt that way too, you were right. Well, Nathaniel took his mouth from his rum glass, looked at us all and, with a smile, and said, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, he was a black man." Yes, Septimus Severus was a black Roman emperor. Oh, another month or so went by with all of us checking Nathaniel's claim of a black Roman emperor out. And just like the Black Pope, we found that Nathaniel was correct. I later apologized to him for doubting his claims of a black pope and Roman emperor. And you know what he said to me? He said, just you wait, Absalom. One day, way off in the future, a group will be sitting around having a few drinks, and your name, Absalom Boston, will pop up. Yes, they'll say, Absalom Boston was a black whaling captain from Nantucket, sailed the ocean with an all-black crew. Yep. You just wait, Absalom. It'll happen. That Nathaniel was right again. But let me say that I owe it, well, not all, to Nantucket. Now, you think about it. It's the 1820s, and I'm out there, a black whaling captain with an all-black crew, sailing the seas of the world, and we were free. Yes, free. What a group we were. First of all, we were all Nantucketers to the core. All of us had sailed on whaling ships from the time we were boys. And on Nantucket, as a black, you worked, you got paid. You had money, you could buy property. We formed Newtown, or as some call it, New Guinea, our little section of Nantucket. Right. As a matter of fact, me and my friend Pompey, oh, we had some funny names, didn't we? Well, Pompey and me got the money together, and we purchased the old dance hall, and it became the Black Baptist Church. Yes, some thanked us, and others never forgave us. I became first mate with Captain Folger. Oh, that was way up there back then. I was 19 years old at the time. I guess I should have been satisfied with that, but with my ego and ambition, it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted my own ship, and I got it. And some people, some whites, saw fit to back me, so off we went, Captain Absalom Boston and his all-black crew, and we were good, too. We were real good, the best, in my opinion. Of course, sometimes when we came back to Nantucket, we were often offered 1/2 to 3/4 of what they paid the white whalers, but after a few disputes, that soon ended. Oh, it wasn't as bad as you're thinking, let me tell you. New Bedford was worse. And you have to think of the rest of the country at the time. 1820. Black slaves working for nothing and calling some white man master. Nantucket wasn't like that at all. Oh. Nantucket wasn't a bad place to be, either black or white. No, Nantucket wasn't perfect. But when you consider the alternative, Nantucket wasn't a bad place to be at all. Anyways, I returned here in the 1840s. Gave up whaling and retired. If you call running the Boston Tavern retired. I decided it was about time for me to spend some days and nights and evenings with my lovely, lovely wife and our children. Children. I must admit, I hardly knew them. It was due to, we spent so much time at sea. One trip lasted a year and a half. One of them lasted almost 3 years. It worked out well for spacing out our families. Yeah. My children, who I hardly knew at all, were 3.5, 5, and 7. No, she was closer to 8. Yes, that was their respected ages when I retired. I guess you can call it a form of whaler Planned Parenthood. Yes, all of us had children spaced similarly. Most of my friends that I sailed with, they had children who were peers of my children. Yes, they all grew up together, probably never figuring out that the similarity in their ages was due to the fact that their fathers were whalers and spent so much time at sea hunting for whales. Of course, there were a few birds that didn't quite match up with time spent here and time away. They were known as immaculate conceptions. But they were mostly talked about up on Petticoat Road. That's where most of the gossip swirled. Yeah, well, I settled in as best as I could. As best as a seafaring man can amongst women and children, politicians and businessmen, all landlubbers. And you know what? I began to think of on things that I had avoided my busy life. One of the things that came to mind was the schools. I began to compare the schools with my tavern, the Boston Tavern. Now, it may seem odd to you that I compare the schools to a tavern, but not me. You know what I figured? I figured in my tavern, we accepted both blacks and whites. So you know what I thought? I thought if we can do that in my tavern, we should be able to do the same things in the schools. So in 1849 or so, I drew up a petition, had my daughter admitted to the local high school, first black student. Wasn't much of a big thing at the time. Most Nantucketers knew me and my family, thought it was a good idea. Some said it should have happened sooner. We all went about our lives, no fuss then or when the next black student enrolled. It's how it should be. The Nantucket way. Yep. Nantucket. A place I always loved and always will. It was here in 1760 that Mr. Swain gave my father his freedom. 1760. Think about that for a while. Yes. I was born here, left here to go to sea, And I died here, 1855. And I'm buried here. So I've been gone from Nantucket 160 years now. Oh, my body's been gone, but I'm still here in mind and spirit, or the hereafter, or whatever you want to call it. It's just like the Boston Tavern and Newtown. We have our own little section, and don't get the wrong idea. You're all welcome. We like it like that. And don't be offended. We welcome everyone. It's just like the Boston Tavern was. As a matter of fact, it's exactly like it. So, when you make the trip over, come in and see us. Just remember my name, Absalom Boston, the black whaling captain from Nantucket, and you're all welcome. Good night.